This is the Voice for Real Estate podcast. Whether you're buying a home, building a home, or designing a home, you'll meet the local experts who can provide all the information you need in every episode of Voice for Real Estate. And be sure to subscribe, share, and comment so you don't miss a single episode of Voice for Real Estate.
Here we are for another episode of Voice for Real Estate, and we're talking to Jane Yager. How do you pronounce that last name?
Baumrind.
She is in charge of the short-term rental in Mount Pleasant, and we've got some exciting news to share with everybody. I feel very positive and excited that we've gone through a journey. The town of Mount Pleasant has been wonderful in dialogue and communicating with the short-term rental owners, and as a result, we founded STRAMP. Short-term Rental Association of Mount Pleasant. And I got to tell you, I know that you helped lead the charge, you and Michelle, and it's been a wonderful working relationship.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me today. It's been great. We've had a lot of good back and forth, some emotions, but that's what it's all about. And it's people's lives and their homes and their income. And it's been a pleasure to work with everyone. We did I think we're at a really good spot right now. I
do too. And I think that we're ahead of the curve from a lot of communities that didn't address this early on. And this is something the town's been working with their residents several years. I was fascinated by some of the data you shared. Tell us in a little dialogue what the software is that you used.
So we use Rentalscape, which is a software that is produced by Decker Technologies. And Rentalscape provides us with all of the information of all short-term rentals that are within the jurisdiction of Mount Pleasant. So if a new ad pops up or your ad comes up, I can go in and I can see what you're doing, how much you're renting, how much you're not renting, what you're charging, what you should be paying for your taxes, just all that activity. And we use this just to make sure everybody's compliant. It's a compliancy software.
You can also, through this software, not only tell us the activity of the people that have short-term rental licenses, but you also can see those that are not compliant, and they would be fined.
Very much, right. So I can see a new ad come up, and because no one can put their address in the ad, it takes a little time to figure out who they are. And sometimes I do it before the software company does, but we get it all done. And we make contact with the owner of the property. And usually 9 out of 10 times, it takes just one notification. You can't do this. You have to wait and get on a wait list to do your short-term rental, or you could rent long-term.
Well, the ordinance that was recently in for the second reading, which was Ordinance 23010, the opportunities for the city and what they can do with people that are not renting it properly. I want to address that, but you sent me some short-term rentals data from April 2022 to March 2023. And it came from the software we just discussed. Yes. And the first one, for those that are watching this on YouTube, the first one is revenue and occupancy tax, July 22nd of 2022. What kind of revenue was generated from short-term rentals? So
there was $1.9 million in that month of July. That was generated by just the compliant permit holders in Mount Pleasant.
So that's July 22 of 2022, right?
Just July, the whole month of July in 2022, yes.
13% of that goes to the county, and then there's a percentage of it that goes to the town of Mount Pleasant. So what went to the county was almost $285,000. It's pretty strong.
Right. So the tax is 13% total. 3% goes to Charleston County, which then they send Mount Pleasant 1%. 10% goes to the state Department of Revenue. And some of those taxes of the 10% also goes to Charleston County, but it doesn't come directly to Mount Pleasant. Only 1% comes to Mount Pleasant.
Jane, do you know if some of that revenue is put in the ATAX revenue? It is, I believe, right?
I would imagine it is. Unfortunately, I never see that money. It doesn't come to me. It comes into our finance department and our business license office, and they send it off. But I would imagine that's where it has to go, because that's what it is.
July 2022, we had $1.9 million. That's amazing. Then you sent me another data, monthly rentals, and this is STR properties in Mount Pleasant. And I noticed that that I thought what was curious is the property that was in July, you said you can document we did 1.9 million. There were 386 properties in that particular month that rented. So that's pretty strong when you figure out, that kind of money for 386 properties.
Right, because we have 400. We're just shy over 400 permits. And at that time, we were a little bit more than shy over the permits due to language in the original ordinance, which has now been changed. But of all that, only the 385 were active and functioning. So there were many that were not. There were probably 30 or 40 that weren't even renting. So if they all had been renting, that revenue would be that much higher.
I'm just surprised that you got the March of this year. We had 399 in there, and it just didn't generate the same kind of revenue that the July. That's interesting.
Podcasting has exploded in popularity, especially local podcasts. As of 2022, 62% of Americans have listened to a podcast. 38% have listened in the last month. 26% in the last week. The podcasting audience is booming with no signs of slowing down. Call the podcast hotline to be featured on these podcasts or to receive information about podcast marketing. Call 843-530-0403 or visit carolinapodcasts.com.
You're listening to the Voice for Real Estate podcast, a conversation about coastal Carolina real estate.
Daily rates. I just put it up on the screen for everybody to look at. But this, again, is between April 2022 and March 2023. In the month that we actually generated that kind of revenue for the city or for the county is the average rate per night was $274.
Funny, isn't it?
They really drilled down. This software is great. What do you like operating for the town and overseeing this? What do you like most about this software?
Oh, I like everything about it. I get a little silly with it. It's like having an extra set of eyes on the road. It gives me so much information, and it gives it to me fast, and it gives it to me very accurate. And it helps me keep all those that have a permit protected in the compliancy of those that don't have one.
That's a great way to look at that.
It does. It really helps out to make sure that you're not doing all that you have to do, and the guy next door is not doing anything and still benefiting.
Yes. I noticed the daily rates. This particular one says the average daily rates in this time period was $242 per night.
Yeah.
So that's a cool thing to share too. Now, the next one that we have here, this is our fifth one. The next one we have here is bookings and platforms. You want to explain what this is?
So the bookings and platforms will show you how the different venues that you can, use to, like, there's 400 that of the 400 applications, say, that are out there, or the let's say there's 415, 400 have an Airbnb ad. And then you have the number of 205 that have VRBO ad. And and then there's the Flipkey, which is another booking site. And Flipkey and VRBO and I think Booking.com, all of those are really operated under Expedia. So anywhere that anyone's booking like that, this software looks at thousands of sites. The only sites that they can't see are a private one. So if you have a private web page, And some people do, even though they advertise on Airbnb, they have their own private, page, and that you can, and maybe that's for family that knows and word of mouth amongst themselves. But a lot of people have their own private stuff too that we can't get into to see, but somebody else might see.
So Jane, can it read social media? If
Not
somebody
so
has
much.
a Facebook page for their rental, will it see that?
No, those are private. And
Okay.
so a Craigslist and a privacy. But one thing you have to understand is most people that, in addition to Airbnb and all that, they add these extras on, they're always going to go back to the Airbnb and VRBO to
Right.
block their days. So
Right.
it still shows up. It's just if they're pretty savvy and they just do a private.
Right. And then the last on here is the type of rental, which I thought was kind of interesting. You've got the number of bedrooms. You've got you've got all sorts of rental sizes on here, whether it's
Right.
a single room, whether it's a full house. So that's broken down. So the figures to the upper right there, that's the total percentage of the people in the residents in Mount Pleasant that have short-term rentals. That's broken down what their
Right.
properties
So
are.
correct. So there's so many that have just a 1-bedroom, which is somebody who just rents a bedroom in their home. Then there's the 2-bedroom house, the 3-bedroom, the 4-bedroom, and so on. And then it tells us the AD is, are they renting an accessories dwelling unit, or are they renting the whole house, or are they renting, here they use the word multifamily, that would be your townhome or a duplex.
Right.
So it breaks it down.
You know, Jane, it also, when you look at this in the renting in a room in the house, I remember distinctively in city council and also planning when jointly we were all going through, well, what do we need to do to make this work for everybody as much as possible? And there was some people there that were renting the rooms out because they helped them pay the taxes on the house. And the city council took that in consideration when they made some of the rules. Getting back to the ordinance, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, and I appreciate you being here, by the way, is the fact that everybody collectively, the citizens of Mount Pleasant and city council and everybody's staff all worked very hard to do a second reading for ordinance 23010. And you can go to the STRAMP website. I'm sure you can go to the Tom's website too, and you can download that. It's STRAMP. You can see it on the screen.org. And when you go there, you can download the ordinance. It's 23010. We had a second reading not that long ago, and I wanted to go over that. But I also wanted to just really tell everybody that's listening that the town, the reason this worked and the reason we got to the way we got is good communications. And yes, there was some emotions, and that's going to happen no matter what community you're in, because when you start talking about people's properties, it's an emotional thing. But everybody did it in a very, I thought, yes, there was some emotion, but there was also intellect. There was camaraderie. We all got together and put our heads together, and that's why we're here talking about the solving of these challenges. So there's 5 items in here. What was your take on the process, Jane?
It's a long process. It's almost like getting something through Congress. It takes a long time to get it done and to get it right, because you have a lot of different people that are looking at it with a lot of different, everybody looks at it differently and from a different perspective. I don't rent. I don't have one of these. So I look at it from that angle. Now, having been in my position, I look at it from the renter's angle. I can see both sides. So the one thing that was really helpful was when STRAMP came and spoke, and we did have a separate meeting where they explained different things about what impacts them in this and what their concerns were and what their fear was of losing this rental, and maybe we were overreaching too much and trying to do regulate it too much. And so it was very helpful to get a different perspective.
The insight from the residents was
correct, because when you look at those numbers, it looks like, wow, everybody's making money hand over fist. Well, at the end of the day, some are, and most are not. Most are making enough to make it worthwhile, but it's not, It's not an end game here.
Nobody's going to get wealthy on it at all. I mean, it's it's a job, and it's a business, really. And
it's a job.
In all transparency, I have a short-term rental, and I'm also one of the founding members of STRAMP. One of the things was the fee. You want to explain what that is, please?
So what they did was they decided to keep the fee at $250 for the permit for those that rent just a bedroom. So if you're renting a bedroom, that means this is your primary home. You live in the home and you rent the bedroom while the guest is there. Sort of like your traditional bed and breakfast. Then they decided, well, we want the whole house if your host is not living in the home and it's a whole house rental, or if they have an accessory dwelling unit on the property, that is a $500 permit fee. So in essence, they doubled the cost of the fee for a whole house and a ADU.
One of the things that was close to everybody's heart, and I also feel that some of the other communities that aren't doing this aren't looking after their citizens. I really think it shows a sensitivity to the needs of the residents of Mount Pleasant that was expressed through the city council and the planning committee. And of course, I'm talking about the inheritance. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Let everybody know what we're talking about.
Yeah. So one of the concerns, because we have a cap and it's a very strong cap, we have only allow 400 permits a year, which is less than 1% of our population and less than 1% of all the single family homes that we have. So it's pretty stringent, and we're the only one in the area that I know of that have such a tight cap. The fear of losing it if they were to die and pass their property on to their family, and if their family wanted to continue, they wouldn't get that permit because it's non-transferable. So they came and they expressed their desire for this. And I think that might have been one of the reasons it took a little longer for this ordinance to get, through, because now legal really needed to take a dive into this to see what we can and can't do. So they did. They came up with a way for this to be transferred only upon death, which is not a great topic, but it's a reality.
No, yeah, makes sense. It was. I thought that showed sensitivity from the town hall to the residents, which is one of the reasons Mount Pleasant's what it is. So let's talk about the parking. I know that there's a lot of conversation about parking, and you would think that, what do you mean? There's so many bigger items.
We don't get many complaints. That I can tell you right off the bat. We don't get many complaints about the program in general. Even from the neighbors who live next door to it, I get very few. But if we're getting one, it's generally parking. And sometimes you'll rent to the proper amount of people that can be in your home, but they're all single and they all come with their own cars. So now you have extra cars on the street. And while it is the public right of way, it's a courtesy. It's a courtesy to get these cars off the street to your neighbors so that if they're having company, their company can park there. If they're having a celebration of some kind, their guests can park there. So what we've done is we've asked them to determine how many parking spots their property has off street. So let's take yours for an example. You may have 3 that could fit in your driveway off the street. We ask that you advertise that in your ad, state, I have 3 parking spots. Please do not bring any more cars, and to keep a monitor on it and to help keep it off the street. Now, I know, and we all understand that you can't control if everybody doesn't listen, but I think more people do than not. So it's worth the effort. And it's so far, I haven't had too much issue with it. People are understanding what we want. And there was a point where there was going to be a fine given if it didn't work out. But we did remove that because it wasn't fair to the owner if someone brings an extra car and it's on the street. It's really about communication and courtesy to your neighborhood.
It's always about communication. I know in our particular neighborhood, we happen to live in the neighborhood where a short-term rental is. So we have the telephone numbers of all the residents that live right around short-term rental. And if we know there's going to be something going on there that may have an overflow of any kind, we'll contact everybody because it's all about communications. I wanted to also mention, I really thought that was a positive statement you said way back. And also it's so true that a short-term rental property that's in a neighborhood or wherever it is usually is better kept than a residential that the owner lives in because it's a business. You want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So we're finding that, you have to keep that house has to be maintained and manicured outside and inside. So we're finding that a short-term rental, while a lot of people are afraid of them and they're concerned about, people coming in and out and in and out, they are by far better maintained than either some homes that are not rented at all or that are long-term. They're
Right.
just well manicured
totally
because
agree.
one bad review.
Tell me about the fines. Let's go into the fines and let's go into detail. So somebody that's listening to this and wants to know about short-term rentals, know how serious the town is to do the right thing. Go ahead. What is it?
What they did was they added a civil fine, civil penalties fine. So that's in addition to our regular ordinance fine. So the regular ordinance fine would be $500. So let's say I was going to issue you a fine for trash because we've discussed it. You're still not bringing the trash back in and you're leaving the neighborhood dirty. So now you're going to get a fine and a court summons. So you'll come to court, you get a $500 ticket. In addition to that, we can add a civil penalty up to $1,000. So now your ticket could be $1,500.
Now, these are for people that don't have short-term rental license, right?
It is for those that don't have it, but it is also for those that have it. If they're not following the rules, if they're not following everything that needs to be done, and we've received multiple complaints. Every time I receive a complaint, I do my research. I make sure it's a valid complaint. If there's a police report, I look for that. I get that. And then I make contact with the owner and the management company, if there is one, discuss what went on, make the determination whether there should be a formal violation, and then they would receive a violation. If you receive, by the third violation that you would receive, the same owner, now you're getting that court summons and ticket.
Have you ever had to do that, Jane? Have three?
Not for someone who has a permit, but I have for those that don't.
Yeah, I don't mean to be speaking for all the members in Stramp, but I think people that have short-term rentals, they feel it's a privilege to have it, and that's what the cap does. The cap makes it a privilege to a large extent. And therefore they want to honor whatever the city, whatever it takes to make it right. I think they want to honor that. What haven't we covered, Jane? I know there's 6 items that are highlighted. There
are the required number of rental nights. So in the past,
this is for somebody that has a short-term rental and has a license, correct?
Yes, this is for someone who's got the permit. You have to rent 24 nights out of 365, and you have to have 4 separate rentals. So this was for people that had permits and were just sitting on it, never using it, and other people are waiting. We have 222 people on a wait list that want to have the same privilege that you all have. And if someone's not going to use their permit, it's much like a building permit. If you get a plumbing permit, it expires. If you get an electrical permit, it expires. These expire, but if you don't use it, you lose it, kind of a thing. So that took a little doing to get that number of what would be a good number. And town council came up with 24 nights, which would be 2 nights a month, and broken up over 4. Make sure there are 4 different times the home was rented, because we don't want one 24 night. We want to make sure.
I also think that it helps the town to have as many rentals, as many nights rented in each one as possible, because these folks go out to eat dinner, they buy groceries, they go shopping. I mean, our guests and our rental, they spend a lot more money around town than they do actually renting our short-term rental, for sure.
Yes. So everybody benefits. The restaurants benefit, the grocery stores benefit,
absolutely,
cleaning companies benefit, the landscapers benefit, the builders benefit. On some level, everybody benefits.
I take pride in getting to know my tenants or my guests, because I want them to feel comfortable being in. I feel like a little, chamber of commerce, because I want them to feel comfortable and feel welcome when they come to Mount Pleasant, when they come to our humble abode. The other thing I thought that was interested in, and I think in the past you've mentioned this is an important element, is there was a lot of people thinking that corporations might come in and buy several homes. The city council took care of that. What are the rules regarding how many you can own?
What they've done is they've limited it now to 2. So any person or any entity, so if you're an LLC or a business, under that business name, you can have 2, and under your name, you can have 2. But if you have 2 and then you're the agent of an LLC, you can't have that third one because you're the manager and the agent of that LLC. So it protects us to not hand out too many, gives everybody else an opportunity. Now, we do have many multiples out there that are over the 2. They get to keep them. Once those properties are not owned by them any longer, that permit would come away and they would not get it again. And we get them back. I've received 2 back last week. I wasn't able to offer them out to anyone because I have to get below the 400 because we're still over the cap. But it's a growing thing. It's a fast moving train that decides to take a different course all the time. I do a lot of research. I read a lot of articles. I speak to a lot of other towns. I have many people call me from other towns. How do you do this? What do you do? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And we're very different because of the cap. But
I think I agree with that, Jane, not to interrupt you, but I agree with that. But I think we're very different because we had positive, good flow of conversation between the planning board and your department and the town council. And that's what allowed us to get where we are now. You and Michelle, I had this brief conversation with her. She gets up and has to talk all the time about the changing of the different ordinances or properties, and do you sanction this? And I went up to her after the city councilman says, I can't believe you're so busy with everything. How could you even have time to do this? To do the short thing. She said, Bill, it's important to y'all, and so therefore it has to be important to us. So that was a really cool thing to say. But anyway, Thanks, Jane, very much
You're welcome.
For taking the time so we can explain this to the audience. And I got to say, last time we did this, which was 6 or 7 months ago, we have almost 90 hours of view time on our last time we got together. Is that not cool?
That's crazy.
It is crazy. From people from various states around the country. But I'm proud of Mount Pleasant, and I very much appreciate you and your department. And I look forward to working with you in the future.
Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. I look forward to working with you too. And I want to tell you, I have received many calls from people who have said to me, I just watched your podcast and it was so informative and I have a few more questions. And I always giggle. I'm like, you did? And they're like, yeah, we watched it. I was like, well, that's great.
All right. Have a good day. And thanks again, okay, Jane, for being on Voice for Real Estate, talking about short-term rentals.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks for watching Voice for Real Estate, where you meet local experts who provide timely information in every episode. Be sure to subscribe, share, and comment. Find Voice for Real Estate online at voiceforrealestate.com.